For this lecture, I will be going over Beethoven. I will discuss who is Beethoven, society's impression of him, Beethoven's pupil, Vienna, and during this lecture, I really want this question to be kept in mind. Was Beethoven's character excusable because of his talent? So, who is Beethoven and what did society think of him? Well, for the 17th and 18th century, he was labeled as a musical genius because his work had never been seen before. Beethoven was creating music and playing music that people had never even imagined of. And so he really brought diversity and creative imagination to Europe's musical culture. He became pretty much labeled as an enigma, meaning a person that is mysterious, puzzling, or difficult to understand. And that truly describes him and that's truly how critics described him also. Critics found him unique and they knew he was a genius artist, but he was not fully appreciated for his work and when he first started to come out and to perform because it was so different and it was so difficult for them to really grasp what he was doing and why he would want to be so different compared to what the society already had musically. But eventually they did accept him because they really embraced his difference and found it as true musical art. So as Beethoven became accepted and became this massive prodigy and this becoming this legend in music, people wanted to learn from him. They wanted to get pretty much to his level. So he had a pupil. And this pupil, his name is Ferdinand Ries. In the article where Ries talks about Beethoven as a teacher, he explains him as very intense and kind of a short fuse. Beethoven would get very angry because he found character in music, and when that was not appreciated, that's when he really became upset. So Ries tells of him being very intense and also repetitive. If he wasn't quite getting something right, he would want Ries to do it over, over, and over and over. And so it was hard for Ries, but he stuck with him. And as time went on, Beethoven unfortunately started to suffer from loss of hearing. He was becoming deaf, and unfortunately this was making him suspicious. It made him prone to take offense very easily, and he became very irritable. So with being very suspicious, there was an instance with Ries and Beethoven where Beethoven had showed Ries some new work of his and had performed it in front of Ries. Ries had shared it with another man, and Beethoven did not know. And when Beethoven found out, he took it as Ries trying to steal his work, kind of stab him in the back. So Beethoven swore Ries off. He told Ries that he will never be able to listen to his music and to watch him play. So Ries was not able to be there when Beethoven played, and he would literally ask him to leave the room. Beethoven and Vienna. So Vienna is the capital of Austria, and Beethoven was not born here, but he ended up doing a lot of performances here and eventually becoming a resident. Today, his residence is a historical site. It's a historical building for people to still appreciate. Back into the earliest 20th century, Vienna was becoming this musical century, and it earned a reputation as a musical capital for Europe. So, conclusion and overview. the big picture that I really want to get out of this lecture is the question that I asked in the beginning. Beethoven was this musical legend. However, he had some questionable behavior. And like I asked before, I really want you to think, just because he was this legend and he had this talent, does that still make him okay to be as irritable and suspicious and just blunt with people as he was? I mean, he cut off his pupil. He was done with him. He wouldn't play in front of him. He'd ask people to leave the room. So I really want you to think about this question.